It started as a dispute pitting Pakistan's judges against the country's president. Now it's grown into a protest movement that's rattling Pervez Musharraf's rule. As the opposition gains momentum, who is set to come out on top? And could it topple the government? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Darren Jordan. For the first time in 8 years, Pakistan's military rule is being shaken. The catalyst? The president's suspension of the country's Chief Justice Iftikhar Mohamed Chowdhury. It sparked demonstrations that some are calling a middle-class revolt. Now, Pakistan's Prime Minister is raising the prospect of enforcing emergency rule to put an end to the protest. Al Jazeera's Kamal Haider reports now from Islamabad.
Just one statement from the country's Prime Minister Shaukat Aziz. An ex-banker hinting emergency rule, and the stock exchange in the country's financial capital, Karachi, took a nosedive, falling 432 points. And that too in spite of the fact that the Prime Minister has been trumpeted as the reformer of the country's economy. His hint of emergency rule came on the heels of a massive turnout to welcome the country's top judge, and was construed by many as a hint of strong arm and blackmailing tactics, according to his critics.
We don't bother their criticism that we are playing the politics. This is our right. If the President of Pakistan can play politics while wearing a uniform, why not we the liars? This is our basic subject.
The landmark proceedings against Iftikhar Mohamed Chowdhury took another twist when the Supreme Court stayed proceedings of the Supreme Judicial Council. A vindication of the Chief Justice's top gun lawyers, who had already voiced their apprehension about some of the judges at the Council and that the Chief Justice could not be tried by such a body.
It's an admission also of the fact that there are very important, in fact, unprecedented points that have been taken up in our petition.
After the strong show of support in the heart of Pakistan's Punjab province, where tens of thousands of people welcomed their Chief Justice, many people in Pakistan will now be seeing a ray of hope in the struggle for the independence of the judiciary and the restoration of democracy. The case of the country's top judge is now going to be decided by a full bench of the Supreme Court. However, the people of Pakistan will be watching this case very carefully. They are already saying that the Chief Justice may not be the benefactor, but has already become a catalyst for change. Kamal Haider, Al Jazeera, Islamabad.
Chief Justice Iftikhar Chowdhury has become the symbol of defiance for Pakistan's opposition movement. But he hasn't always been a public hero. In the past, he was regarded as a supporter of Pervez Musharraf. In 1999, he was one of the judges who validated the general's coup against an elected government. More recently, he's confronted the government over thousands of Pakistanis who've gone missing as part of the so-called US war on terror. And this week, Chowdhury rallied supporters, declaring that dictatorships will inevitably be destroyed. Well, joining us on today's edition are guests from Islamabad, Sahibzada Ahmad Kasuri, attorney at law and one of the founding fathers of the Pakistani Constitution of 1973, and Mohammad Ikram Chowdhury, senior advocate of the Supreme Court of Pakistan and former vice president of the Supreme Court Bar Association. Gentlemen, welcome to the programme. Mr. Kasuri, let me start with you, if I may. Many observers say public anger over Iftikhar Chowdhury's sacking is now the single biggest threat to Pervez Musharraf's rule. Is that how you see it?
Well, there's no possibility of any threat to Musharraf government. Governments in this part of the world are not toppled down by bringing few thousand people on the street, and that too after an interval of 10 days. You know, for toppling government, there has to be a countrywide demonstration, strikes, lockouts, laborers, students all involved in the movement. But when you look at the whole thing, you will find that only very motivated workers who are very close-circuit workers of various political parties, they are involved in this movement. And only the politicians are trying to take advantage of this situation. As you rightly said, that Mr. Iftikhar Muhammad Chaudhry has become a catalytic agent for some kind of a political unrest in the country. And political parties have got their own agenda. If you look at their demonstration, well, they are not talking about the rule of law or for the independence of democracy. Their own record has been horrible when they were in power vis-a-vis the judiciary. One party, when they were in power, they attacked on the judiciary, while the Chief Justice at that time, Mr. Justice Sajjad Ali Shah, was presiding over the court. They launched a physical attack in the courtroom.
Okay, all right, let's get some response now from Mohammed Chowdhury in Islamabad. We saw thousands of demonstrators turn out in Lahore recently to support the Chief Justice, Iftikhar Chowdhury. How much do you think President Musharraf is rattled by this judicial crisis, do you think?
Thank you very much. I feel there is time for us to see how the history is taking different strides in different directions. Everybody knows around the world and in Pakistan that Pakistan has been ruled mostly by the journals, and there has been widespread hatred in and around the country. Fundamental rights issue, poverty, lack of education, lot of funds to be available in the annual budgets to the armed forces, and still they are holding lot of business in the shape of banks, insurance companies, textile, housing, and etc., etc. So I think it's a long way to go, and there is a history for all this repercussion which has come by way of refusal of Chief Justice Pakistan Iftikhar Muhammad Chaudhry to resign, and that too by force, by show of force, and the might he had, the General Musharraf had, while wearing the uniforms. He violated all the norms, and he had no legal sanction, legal authority to do so. Yet he called the Chief Justice of Pakistan and asked him to resign by force, which was declined.
Okay.
Now, so far as a moment, please. So far as the response of the community, lawyers community, and the people of Pakistan, I must say this thing, that the lawyers of Pakistan, over the years, they have been staging protests against the dictatorship of army in Pakistan, and specifically General Musharraf. And the people of Pakistan, while we traveled from Islamabad to Peshawar, and then Islamabad to Lahore, they have shown tremendous support for the cause of democracy, rule of law, and constitution in Pakistan.
Okay, we will try and come back to that a little bit later, but let me go back to Sahibzada Kasuri there, because Pakistan's Supreme Court has now suspended the inquiry into misconduct charges against Iftikhar Chowdhury. This ruling is a victory for Mr. Chowdhury, though, isn't it?
Certainly not. It's just an interim order which is subject to confirmation before the full court, when the full court will assemble on the 14th of May this month. This will be the first question which will be put up before the court, and the court will then see whether it confirms this interim order or not. But it is certainly not a victory, because since they have challenged the constitution of the Supreme Judicial Council, which comes into being under Article 209 of the Constitution, so they have given this interim order with a view that suppose if the council proceed further and eventually the Supreme Court comes to a conclusion that yes, against one of the member charge of the bias is proved, then the whole proceeding will come to a naught. So for that reason, they have given an interim order, but this is certainly not a victory, because the matter pertaining to the Chief Justice's conduct and his capacity to dispense justice, because there are two important things in Article 209, capacity of a judge to administer justice, and his conduct. And on these two area, he has been charged, and the reference is before the Supreme Court of Pakistan, where the president is fully competent under the Constitution to send a reference. Even a private citizen can send a reference against a judge of the Supreme Court.
I accept your point. Mohammed Chowdhury, let me come back to you briefly, because I personally interviewed Pervez Musharraf a few weeks ago, and during that interview he said that he wasn't worried by the low numbers of demonstrators that turned out on the streets, but surely he must be worried now if the Pakistani Prime Minister is hinting at emergency rule.
Yes, that's right. You see, the response of the people of Pakistan, of course, the political parties as well, is growing day by day. And so far as the liars movement is concerned, it is strong. It is the people are united, and we have only 3-4 things on our agenda. We are not part of any political struggle except this, that we want to see the termination of army rule in Pakistan, the restoration of democracy, independent judiciary minus law of necessity, which was held to be the law of the land over past many, many years. And that has caused marvelous loss to the democracy, the fundamental rights, and the federation itself, the state itself. And the third thing, which is very essential, we are also giving a message to the politicians of Pakistan, well, this is the time, you should come forward for the benefit of the people of Pakistan and for the cause of Pakistan, instead of going around for the personal benefits of an individual and a political party.
Time for a short break now, but when we come back, we'll take a look at how Pakistan's opposition parties may be benefiting from this crisis and what the future holds for President Musharraf. Stay with us.